There comes a moment, silent, almost invisible, when your old self begins to dissolve. It doesn't announce itself with thunder or fire. It arrives quietly, like dawn after a long night, when something inside you whispers, "This can't be all there is." That's how every transformation begins. Not with ambition, but with fatigue. You get tired of pretending, tired of noise, tired of chasing what never fills you. This is the moment Carl Jung called the crack of consciousness, the instant your soul begins to rebel against the life your ego built. You don't plan an awakening. It happens when the truth becomes heavier to suppress than to face. At first, you think something is wrong with you. You stop caring about things that used to define you, achievements, validation, noise. People call it burnout. Jung called it the withdrawal of libido from false attachments. Energy that once went into chasing illusions begins to retreat inward. You feel empty, but the emptiness is sacred. It's the clearing before rebirth. Like a forest after fire, where the soil must burn to grow again. You begin to sense that pain isn't punishment, it's preparation. The outer world loses its grip. Friends seem distant. Goals feel hollow. You can't unsee what you've seen, the subtle absurdity of living only for approval. In Jungian terms, this is the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are beneath conditioning. It starts with confusion, the disintegration of certainty. Everything you once believed in begins to shake. The career, the identity, the image you built, they start to feel borrowed. You question not just your path, but the one walking it. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In this moment, you realize how much of your life was driven by invisible scripts, childhood fears, collective expectations, borrowed dreams. Awakening begins when you stop defending those illusions. The mind screams for clarity, but the soul demands surrender. And so, confusion, the very thing we're taught to fear, becomes the first teacher. You start asking questions that have no immediate answers. Who am I when I'm not performing? What if success isn't peace? What if feeling lost is part of being found? Each question breaks the surface of the self the way cracks form on ice before spring. But awakening isn't graceful. It's chaotic, because the ego fights for survival. It wants control, explanation, logic. It wants to label what can't yet be named. You'll try to fix it with self-help, with noise, with distractions, anything but stillness. Yet silence keeps calling you back. You may notice that your old coping patterns, overthinking, pleasing, controlling, stop working. You begin to feel naked in front of yourself. There's nowhere left to hide. This is when most people panic, because the mind mistakes stillness for danger. It says, do something, fill the gap. But the soul whispers, wait, let it fall. That waiting, that terrifying pause, is where real power hides. The ego dies screaming, the soul rises silently. Every great transformation starts with a fall. Adam fell from Eden. Icarus fell from the sky. And in your quiet, internal mythology, you too must fall from the illusion of who you thought you were. Jung called this the descent into the unconscious. It's not a punishment, it's initiation. You have to descend to reclaim what you've disowned. Maybe it looks like heartbreak. Maybe it looks like losing the job that once defined you. Maybe it's depression, not as illness, but as withdrawn life energy returning to the soul. Pain becomes a portal when you stop labeling it as failure. As the false layers crumble, the shadow begins to speak. It doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to balance you. All the anger, jealousy, grief, and unmet longing you buried start to rise. They aren't demons, they're messengers. The shadow says, if you want to be whole, you must stop pretending to be only light. You start to realize how much of your identity was built on denial, the need to be good, to be accepted, to never disappoint. But the truth is more honest than pleasant. The parts of you you've rejected, those are the ones holding your power. In Jungian therapy, this is where the real work begins. You face what you fear to feel. You meet your anger without shame, your grief without judgment. You stop running from discomfort, and it begins to dissolve under your awareness. Then, quietly, something extraordinary happens. The same emotions that once ruled you begin to lose control over you. You don't suppress them, you observe them. You realize that pain doesn't need fixing, it needs listening. You begin to sense a space within yourself that nothing can shake. A calm observer. Jung called it the self, the center of wholeness. The ego revolves around survival, the self orbits meaning. In that awareness, life doesn't become easier, it becomes clearer. You no longer chase peace, you cultivate it. You no longer seek love, you radiate it. And this shift, from seeking to embodying, is the beginning of real freedom. This is the first threshold, the breaking of illusion, the encounter with shadow, and the glimpse of the self beyond noise. It's not the end of the storm, it's learning to dance within it. The next stage? Integration, where fragments become whole and pain transforms into power. After the collapse comes the quiet reconstruction. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not glamorous. There are no trumpets, no epiphanies, only moments of small honesty that feel heavier than entire years of pretending. You begin to rebuild your inner world, brick by brick, using truth as your only material. It's strange. The more real you become, the less you need to explain. You start to prefer silence over noise, solitude over validation. For the first time, your peace no longer depends on anyone else's permission. But the rebuilding demands sacrifice. You have to let go of who you were, not because you failed, but because you've outgrown the version of you that survived instead of lived. Jung said that the goal of life is not perfection, but wholeness. Wholeness requires contradiction. It means holding both light and darkness without denial. You begin to integrate what you once rejected. You notice your anger, your envy, your fear, and instead of suppressing them, you listen. They reveal what still hurts, what still longs to be seen. Integration is not soft. It's the sacred tension of opposites. Love and fear, joy and sorrow, strength and fragility, all existing in the same heart. You realize that balance doesn't come from avoiding extremes, but from allowing them to coexist. Wholeness isn't about being flawless, it's about being honest. You no longer want to fix yourself, you want to know yourself. Jungian, one night, in the quiet between thoughts, you sense a small voice, timid, familiar. It's the child you once were, the one who dreamed without fear, who loved without conditions, before the world taught you to shrink. This is not nostalgia, it's recovery. Jung called it the reconciliation with the child archetype. The moment you begin to heal the split between who you were and who you pretended to be. You realize that the child never left. You just stopped listening. Every time you silenced your feelings, you silenced that voice. Every time you played roles to be loved, you abandoned your own truth. Now, you take that child's hand. You don't promise endless happiness, you promise presence. And that simple act of self-compassion rewrites the past in ways therapy alone never could. Healing is not rewriting history. It's releasing its hold on your heart. As your awareness deepens, something magical happens. You begin to dream again. Not just at night, but in waking life. Dreams in Jungian psychology are not random. They are letters from the unconscious, carrying symbols meant to balance the conscious mind. They remind you that the psyche is not an enemy, but an ecosystem. You start to notice synchronicities, subtle coincidences that feel like whispers from a larger order. A song that plays at the exact moment you think of someone. A stranger's words that answer a question you never spoke aloud. The more you listen, the more the universe speaks. It's not superstition, it's connection. You begin to see that life itself is a dialogue between your conscious and unconscious mind. You are both the dreamer and the dreamed. But the path of awakening isn't linear. There will be moments when you want to go back, to numbness, to comfort, to the familiar pain that at least felt predictable. Growth can feel lonely because few will understand it. When you stop playing the old roles, the people who loved those roles may drift away. You will be misunderstood, not because you've changed too much, but because you finally stopped pretending. This is where most turn around. But you keep walking, because you've tasted something real and imitation no longer satisfies. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Once you've glimpsed awareness, ignorance becomes a wound you can't bear. The temptation to go back will come disguised as peace, but it will feel like a cage. Slowly, authenticity becomes your kindness just to avoid conflict. You speak your truth, even when your voice trembles. You realize that love without honesty is just attachment in disguise. There's power in being misunderstood, because when you no longer chase being liked, you begin to attract what's meant for your truth, not your mask. The self, that deeper center Jung described, doesn't crave approval. It radiates presence. You notice how people begin to respond differently to you, not because you've become louder, but because your silence now carries weight. True confidence is not the absence of fear, it's the willingness to stand inside it. There comes a phase when solitude becomes sacred, not isolation, but communion with the unseen. You start to see silence as a temple, not a void. In that stillness, creativity blooms. You start writing, painting, walking, breathing, not for recognition, but for restoration. In solitude, you rediscover joy without audience. And this is where the soul begins to sing again. Jung wrote that modern man is afraid of silence because silence forces him to meet himself. But you've learned to listen. Integration isn't the end of suffering, it's the end of resistance. You no longer fight your emotions, you let them guide you. You no longer seek perfection, you honor progress. And somewhere between the fall and the rebuilding, you realize that awakening was never about becoming new. It was about remembering what was true all along. This is not enlightenment, it's embodiment. The quiet strength of knowing that even in your darkest hour, you were never broken, just becoming. Transformation always asks for a death. Not of the body, but of the false identities you've carried like armor. It feels like losing yourself, and in many ways it is. But what dies is only what was never truly alive. The ego resists until the very end. It bargains, blames, rationalizes, whispering that safety lies in the familiar pain you once called home. But deep down, you know, there's no way back. Because even if you return, you won't fit there anymore. Jung said, "There is no birth of consciousness without pain. You can't awaken without first dissolving what once defined you. Every ending is a sacred initiation, and the pain you feel now is not destruction, it's dilation." The soul expands when the ego collapses. There will be a night, maybe several, when meaning seems to vanish completely. When every practice, every insight, every spiritual word feels hollow. You'll stare into the mirror and see not a person, but a question that refuses to be answered. This is not regression, it's refinement. Jung called it the dark night of individuation, the passage between old consciousness and new awareness. Nothing external can help you here. Books will fall silent. Advice will sound shallow. You will walk alone, not because you're lost, but because your path no longer fits anyone else's map. And in that silence, you'll finally stop asking life for meaning and let life ask you. One dawn, between exhaustion and clarity, something shifts. You stop trying to fix yourself. You stop trying to understand everything. Instead, you surrender, not in defeat, in trust. You realize that the same intelligence that makes the stars move beats your heart without asking for your permission. You don't need to control life. You need to cooperate with it. That's when you feel it. A quiet pulse under the chaos, a rhythm older than thought itself. It's been there all along, waiting for you to listen. In surrender, you become transparent to life. The need to prove dissolves. The fear of being misunderstood no longer paralyzes you. You stop performing enlightenment and start living truth. Freedom is not having control. It's being at peace with not needing it. Then comes the light. Not a blinding one, a gentle, patient light that seeps through the cracks of everything you once called broken. You begin to feel connected, not to people or things, but to being itself. Jung called this the union with the self, the reconciliation of the conscious and unconscious, where opposites no longer fight, but dance. You see beauty in imperfection, wisdom in pain, and purpose in even the smallest details of life. You no longer divide the world into good and bad. You see the divine symmetry behind it all. Love, once an emotion, becomes awareness. It's no longer something you seek, but something you are. You realize the self was never something to find. It's what remained after everything false was burned away. The caterpillar never became the butterfly. It simply stopped clinging to the ground. When you begin to live from this awareness, life doesn't become perfect. It becomes real. You still feel pain, but now it passes through you instead of defining you. You still face fear, but you meet it with curiosity instead of resistance. You stop chasing highs and start honoring cycles. You rest when life withdraws, create when inspiration calls, and forgive yourself for being human. You become what Jung called a vessel of consciousness, a soul grounded in impermanence, not running from shadow or light, but walking hand in hand with both. And in that balance, you no longer need to find purpose. You start living it. Then something beautiful happens. The outer world starts reflecting your inner peace, not because the world changed, but because your perception did. You see people not as obstacles, but as mirrors. Even conflict becomes communication, a dance between projections seeking to be understood. You begin to understand the line Jung wrote so long ago. The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. But now you do know. You're not a role, a mask, a narrative. You're a consciousness experiencing itself through form. And because of that, you can finally love without clinging, give without losing, and speak without defending. Every awakening leads back to the ordinary world. You return, not as a saint or a sage, but as someone quietly human, rooted in the sacred simplicity of life. You do the same things, eat, walk, work, laugh, but nothing feels the same. Because now, even the smallest act carries meaning. Washing dishes becomes meditation. A stranger's smile becomes prayer. And the silence that once terrified you becomes home. This is the end of searching and the beginning of seeing. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he never said it would be easy. It takes courage to shed the masks, to face the void, to meet the mirror without flinching. Yet when you do, you find that life was never against you. It was always sculpting you. The storms were polishing your soul. The losses were pruning your path. The darkness was teaching you how to see. And in the stillness of that realization, you smile, not because life is perfect, but because you are finally real. It's just an ordinary morning. No revelation, no thunder in the sky, only sunlight slipping through thin curtains, the smell of coffee, and your breathing, steady, quiet, alive. For years, you rushed through mornings like this, chasing meaning somewhere else. But today feels different. Today, you're here, fully. Not trying to escape, not performing calm, not fighting the silence, Nothing miraculous happened. You simply stopped running long enough for peace to catch up. The stillness that once terrified you has become your ground. This is how awakening really looks. Not fireworks, just presence. When you return to the ordinary world, you begin to see the sacred hiding inside it. A smile, a breath, a ray of light on the floor. Each one is a small invitation to exist. You stop asking, "Where is meaning?" Because meaning is already humming beneath everything. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." You have looked within, and now when you look out, the world mirrors back your depth. It's no longer a battlefield or a stage. It's a mirror, calm, patient, forgiving. There are weights you no longer lift, the need to be right, the hunger to be understood, the reflex to apologize for existing. They fall away naturally, like dust from clean glass. Not because you've become detached, but because you've become honest. Truth no longer feels like confrontation. It feels like alignment. You are still kind, but not compliant. Still soft, but not breakable. Still open, but with boundaries shaped by self-respect. This is strength, not the loud, rigid kind, but the quiet firmness of someone who finally trusts their own ground. You also learn a new way to love, not as attachment, but as presence. You see people as they are, not as projects to fix, nor puzzles to complete you. You recognize their stories, their scars, their shadows, and in that recognition, judgment turns into understanding. You no longer rescue, you witness. Love now feels like space, not possession, like breath, not grip, like truth, not performance. And in giving that kind of love, you finally taste the freedom of receiving it. The shadow never disappears. It waits as it always has, patient, loyal, misunderstood. But now, when it rises, you no longer fear it. You invite it in. When anger knocks, you ask, "What are you protecting?" When fear visits, you whisper, "Thank you for warning me." Let's walk through this together. This is what integration looks like, not suppression, but dialogue. You don't control emotions, you converse with them. You don't manage the mind, you make peace with it. And that peace is the rarest kind, the kind born from inclusion, not avoidance. Purpose no longer lives at the end of the road. It lives in the way you place your hands on today, in how you listen, how you breathe, how you show up even when no one's watching. You understand now. Your mission isn't to become someone extraordinary. It's to become real in everything you do. When you are real, everything else aligns itself naturally. Meaning isn't something to find, it's something to remember. You used to beg for maps, now you have a compass. A map is someone else's story, a borrowed certainty. A compass is your inner voice, quiet but consistent, always pointing toward what is true for you. It doesn't promise comfort, it promises direction. Every time you lose your way, you return to the same questions. What is true right now? What am I avoiding? If I chose from love instead of fear, what would I do? The answers aren't always easy, but they always set you free. Your power has changed shape. It no longer comes from convincing others, but from not needing to. It's not the power to dominate, but the power to remain centered when life tries to spin you. It's not the ability to win arguments, but the ability to walk away in peace. This is the authority of presence, the quiet confidence of someone who finally knows themselves. You no longer ask, "How do I make people see me?" You ask, "How can I see myself more clearly?" And when you do, the world sees you too. Everyone leaves behind an invisible thread. Yours may be kindness, presence, or the way you listen without fixing. It might be a note you wrote to yourself on a day you almost gave up, or a smile you gave to a stranger who needed a reason to stay alive. You'll never know the full weight of those gestures, And that's the beauty of it. The world doesn't change through grand declarations, but through quiet acts of truth repeated endlessly. When everything unnecessary has burned away, what's left is not emptiness, it's capacity. Capacity to hold joy without clinging, pain without collapsing, and contradictions without breaking. Wholeness isn't about being flawless. It's about being able to contain opposites and still remain whole. You become a vessel that glows through its cracks, a soul stitched together by awareness. Maybe tonight, as the lights fade, you'll hear a soft voice inside say, "Thank you for not abandoning us." That voice belongs to every version of you, the child, the wanderer, the warrior, the shadow. You didn't save them. You saw them. You stayed. That's the privilege Jung spoke of. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And if tomorrow you find yourself lost again, remember, you have a compass now. You've learned how to walk through darkness without rushing the dawn, because sunrise never comes late to those who have learned to stand still long enough to see it. Keep walking, slowly, honestly, fully. The rest, life will show you.